pretty close to 7:03. We're going to get started. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. This is a big, important one, thinking back on some awesome times we've had so far this school year, but mostly thinking ahead to what is coming up in the fall in terms of our budget and what we're going to be able to do to make our school great. So we're going to keep it relatively quick with sort of other updates on different events that are still happening, but the meat of it is going to come up fast with our budget overview. So I'm going to get us started and share my screen. All right, so here we are, PTA meeting. Tenemos interpretación en español. ¿No? ¿Sí? No estoy segura. ¿Sí? ¿Funciona? Ok. Si necesita, por favor, haga clic en el icono del mundo abajo. Gracias. Okay, our same old rules, but they're great ones. Speed, putting questions into the chat so that maybe Bridget, our moderator, can stop us if something important comes. Otherwise, we'll save it for the end. Community spirit and open-mindedness, especially tonight as we think through options for the fall, and remember to stay muted. So quickly through our agenda, welcome, principal's message, budget review and vote, and then we get into committee updates, events, some projects and promos and homework. Because Principal Max is not able to join right now, but he will be joining in about half an hour, I will be reading his updates, but he will be signing on to do sort of a Q&A of anything people wanted to know more about towards the end of the meeting. All right, so updates from Max. There is still a lot of state testing going on. So this week, the 4th and 5th graders are finishing up, and next week it is the 3rd graders' turn. So they'll be doing a week of English language arts and math. The usual reminders for that, just try and help your kid get a good night's sleep, eat a healthy breakfast if possible, but if not, we've got sugary snacks to stuff them up and fuel them before they hunker down for really fun tests. Community meeting, or community morning circle rather, is happening this coming Friday from 8:15 to 9:15. And this is a really big special one because the SFUSD celebrates Pride during the month of, I guess, is it May or April at that point? At the cusp. But we are going to be graced by the presence of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to do an actual Pride march in the neighborhood and then have some read alouds in the younger classrooms. So just join for that. It's going to be very colorful and fun. And as always, there should be bagels and coffee to be had, catching up with one another. 5th grade graduation. The official date and time for that is Thursday, June 1st at 10 a.m. And more info will come about that. And lastly, ASEP, one of our after-school programs, their summer program will be based at their other site. They have 2 sites across the city, and the other is at McKinley Elementary, and that's where our favorite staff, teachers will be hosting our beloved ASEP program for the summer. So follow up with Brenda if you're interested in that. Right. Okay, Tim, your moment. You all,
Hello.
before I even let Tim start, let me just say, Tim got like signed up for this job. And I mean, he was willing, but he has really hauled butt to make this whole budget come together, done a lot of thinking about the fundraising. So seriously, Tim, you rock. You've put so much thought into this. Take it away.
Appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Rebecca, I'm going to request remote control.
Oh,
Click.
that's so easy. Amazing.
All right.
Oh, wait.
All right.
No accessibility. Shoot. Is it? Damn it. Wait, okay. Oh, all I have to do is I think click a thing.
No. Could I maybe share my screen here?
Yeah.
And then I have it all queued up here.
We were so close. That seemed too easy.
Let's do this. Do that one. Can everyone see. Everyone see that one?
Mhm. Yep.
Cool. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our annual budget review. Just sort of an agenda within the agenda. We're going to do some, pre stuff. We had the idea to run through a quick, what I call budget 101, just to kind of explain how we think about the budget, get to the proposals, voting, and wrap up. Sound good, everyone?
Great.
All righty. So before we start, so I know there's a lot of angst and a lot of hand wringing. And the first thing I want to say is there's enough money to keep the 4th and 5th grade classroom teacher. I know that was really stressing some folks out. There's enough money to do that. The proposal that I'm going to walk through today includes that. So if you are coming on this call nervous about that, I want to get that out of the way. We have enough money to do that. Second thing, in fact, you all were so generous with your donations and pledges that we're in fact within a range where there's a scenario where we can fully fund the entire PTA budget for next year, which is fantastic news. I will go through all of that and try to explain the thinking there. So that's the second point. Just some numbers. When we sent out the first email kind of in late March, we noted that we thought we were $90,000 behind. When all is said and done, fast forward to Monday, by my count, we hit $97,000 donated and raised. And huge shout out to Rebecca and the kids, because 10,000 of that was the Jump-a-thon. So that is not an insignificant piece of this raised money. That was actually, the Jump-a-thon turned out to be our largest fundraising event of the year. So kudos to everyone. Thank you so much. And one thing that I want to point out, so we're going to vote on a budget for today, right? But coming up, we're going to hold what I'll call a budget amendment vote in September, which will be our first meeting of the new year. And the reason for that is because I don't know how much is rolling over from this year's budget. The plan is just to roll over anything that we don't spend from this year's budget into next year's budget. So there'll be a follow-up budget vote. And next month, I will give a detailed update to let everyone know where we're at. Sound good? All right, some ground rules, just for folks to keep in mind. As always, this whole organization is run on volunteers, so we're all volunteers here. I copied this from the school summit that Max ran. Keep humanity at the center of your work, or we'll just all be humans. And none of this is bad news, by the way. I wrote these slides like a couple of weeks ago and have refined them. So we'll do our best to let everyone speak who wants to in regards to the budget. And just so everyone's aware, we're going to kind of pose two questions. One, like I mentioned, to pass a budget for today. And then there's a poll question that we'll send out later about how we approach fundraising as an organization. Before I jump into it, I wanted to give a huge shout out to a couple of folks. These are maybe people that don't speak a lot or kind of work behind the scenes. So one is David Stevenson. For those of you who don't know, he's our fundraising chair. He's awesome. He's working extremely hard to pull everything together. The second is actually my wife. So she is the second half of the PTA treasurer. So anyone that's putting checks in the mailbox, she's actually at the school getting those. And just as a funny story, about a couple hours before the circus event, our PayPal account was locked. And I can tell anyone that story over a beer. But David and Lee were the first two people I got on the phone to solve this problem. So huge shout out to those folks. Of course, Max is school principal extraordinaire, and you all for your generosity and just general community spirit. All right, let's get into some numbers here. So I call this Budget 101. So on the left is a summary of our budget for this fiscal year. So it's $235,000. Today, what we're going to vote on is a budget up to $175,000. And underneath here, I kind of list out the buckets of money that we have to play with. So one is booked income. That's income that's actually come into our bank accounts. Two is expenses. That's money that we've spent to run mostly the events, the community events over the course of the year. Three is what I call unbooked but verified income. This is mostly corporate matches that have come in the last couple of weeks. Those take a couple of weeks to land, but I do have documentation from everyone who submitted, and I'm very confident that that money will arrive. And then four is a small bit of budget rollover. So I've added up all these numbers again and again, and if you add them all up, you get to $175,000. That said, there's another bit of money that I call unbooked, unverified income, which is income that I'm pretty sure is going to come, but it's just not, I just don't have documentation quite yet, right? Whether it's like, I've submitted the check and I'm waiting on the bank to cash it, or there's we have some of you have given donations through our every.org ACH, and I'm pretty sure this money is going to land, but just don't have some of the documentation yet. If you add in that money, we have $193,000, just over $192,000. And then my last point, the reason that I include a budget rollover, you'll see on the next slide. So we budgeted actually $4,000 for bank fees in this year's budget. I've been tracking the bank fees very, very closely. We're not going to spend nearly $4,000 on bank fees, not even half of that. So my proposal is that we kind of just split the $4,000, two for this year and then just two for the next fiscal year. I will pause there. Are there any questions about this and these pockets of money?
Nothing in the chat box.
Hey, Tim, it's Carla.
Okay.
Can you help
Hey.
me understand? Well, first, let me just say thank you to you and to everyone. It's a lot of work and effort, and even just pushing back the meeting to today to ensure that we had enough time. So thank you for all of that. When you say our budget is $175,000, how are the expenses what in essence is those line items on the left top hand side of the full year 2023 budget? Is that what you're allotting to as expenses?
No, the expenses are what we pay to put on like events, right? So for example, pasta night took in, a certain amount of money, and then so the gross amount of money we took in pasta night is under this booked income column. And then we reimbursed people for the event, right?
And why does that hit the 2024 budget and not the 2023 budget?
So that's the way we tracked it, right? So pasta night, I'm making up numbers, but we took in like $5,000, and of that $5,000, I had to write out $1,500 in reimbursements, right, to put on the event. So we grossed so we netted $3,500 for the event.
Tim, so I think It's just because what we raise for 2024 budget is raised in this fiscal year, right? So that's why it is what it is, right?
So another way, so I could have combined these two and just said we netted 133.5. That's what we netted this year.
Did we not have expenses allotted in the meeting admin programs as an example in school events for 2023 though? Isn't that what those items are meant to be for?
We did. So some of these, so like school events, we paid for some things in back to school night, right? So some of the, so I was taking from like the budget items in 2023, things that weren't put on by the PTA, but the PTA was kind of like supplementing, right? The community events, I counted like the gross income, and then we would take the expenses out, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And those events are losses essentially. Like they're not designed to raise money, right? The ones you're writing off towards the like school events funds from FY23 versus FY24 fundraising events. You're counting towards FY24 both in terms of expenses and income, right?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Because it wouldn't be fair to spend 2023 budget on 24 events. So we want to keep it to the year that it's allocated towards. Is that right?
Sure. It's so this is how I think about it. Like money, any money that we made for pasta night, we made a little bit of money on every event that we threw this year, right? We made a couple $1,000s. All that money goes towards next year's budget, right? That's maybe the best way to read this. Maybe to your point, Carla, like we could have slotted it. It's just a matter of how you like run the books. Like I could have slotted the expenses under like the school events. We would have run out of money after $2,000, and then I would have started taking that money from the actual events themselves.
Makes sense. It's a different view than what we've seen in the past. And at the end of the day, to your point, right, the dollars are rolling over anyways, and the expenses are hitting one way or another. It's a different view to allot 2023 expenses into the 2024 budget.
Maybe my question is, do we when we put on the events, are we limiting it? So I guess I allowed the events to run as long as they were revenue neutral, like the community events to run as long as they were revenue neutral, right? I didn't hold us to the $2,000 budget for every single community event that we put on. Is that accurate? Is that what we've done in the past?
As long as the approved budget line item is either not being tapped into or is only tapped into at that amount approved, then yes, that would be the right way to hold the event, correct?
Okay. Yeah, I can assure you, we made a little bit of money on every single community event that we ran, right? Like there's no community event that we ran for which we lost money. They were all at the very least revenue neutral.
That answers my question on the expense line item for the 2024 budget. Thank you.
Cool, sure thing. Okay, so my budget proposal, what I'm going to term is to fund all teaching positions today with what I call a path to fund supplies and other. So let me explain the thinking here. So what I'm asking us to approve as PTA today is $172,000 spend against the $175,000 that we have available to us. So what is that $172,000 going to go to? So 170 of it is going to go to fund teaching positions, which I list out here. So that includes the 4th and 5th grade classroom teacher and a slate of sort of partial positions. So this slate of partial positions is actually something that we've been working pretty closely with Max on. I think it is, I was not at last year's budget meeting, but I think it is very similar. It's a somewhat similar idea. And so my first note is we're doing some budgetary sort of swapping here. And without getting into the details, the best way for me to explain it is that these sort of partial positions come just as a package deal, right? Like this is not like, we don't kind of take them a la carte. And in taking them as a package deal, we actually get a much better price, right? Like our money can go a lot further. And so I was actually on the phone with Max yesterday, telling like, and when I was making sure that I'm getting this correct. So not only the extra 4th, 5th grade teacher, we'd be paying for part of 2 reading specialists, both English and Spanish, part of a math specialist, part of a K&1 art teacher. We'd be helping supply extra ASAP coverage, and we'd be helping the school run a program called Stage Right. And so that is sort of the slate of partial teaching positions that we would fund in addition to the extra 4th and 5th grade teacher with that $170,000. A couple more notes. The reason that I'm proposing that we pass this today is because we actually have a deadline by which we need to fund these positions. And that deadline is the end of the week. And so Carla kind of mentioned why we were shifting this meeting around. The reason is because we were trying to give ourselves as much time as possible to raise money in order to fund these positions. So the long and short of it is, if we vote to fund them today, we will have met the deadline, and Max can go ahead and inform the district and the teachers involved that they will continue to work at the school. The third note, I mentioned kind of the rollover with the bank fees. The only reason I mentioned that is because that allows us to sort of operate as a PTA ahead of the amendment vote in September, right? So we can, we run a back to school barbecue, for example, early on in the school year, that, we'll have PayPal QR codes and we pay PayPal fees. So the reason I just threw that in there is to give us some room to operate and make sure that we just kind of have that in the budget on the books. So that's really the $172,000 that I'm looking to vote on for approval. So again, it's $170,000 to fund teaching positions at the school, which, Max and the executive team feel is the biggest impact for our dollars in terms of like how we're going to help the students at the school, and a small bit for just sort of operational costs. Any questions related to this?
I'm not a question, but a comment, Carla, again. Sure. I'll just say that last year when as a PTA, we recommended for the second reading specialist, it was done under the very open conversation that one, it's unusual for school to have 2 reading specialists. and that maintaining 2 reading specialists at the school would require quite a bit of PTA support. And given that we are able to continue to fund every single resource that we have had at the school with K1 art teachers, with maintaining our classroom size is small for all class levels, and the additional items like ASAP coverage as an example that I know is very beneficial to our teachers. Just goes to show what we are able to do as a community, and this has my full support.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So just to continue on with that, sort of just to give you all a preview of what I'm thinking in September. So I believe in September we'll actually hit a budget of $210,000. So you're probably, if you're doing some quick math, there's a $38,000 difference between today and September. And naturally you're wondering how are we going to make up $38,000? So this is kind of my best way to describe it. So we're going to book all the income that I mentioned, right? So we have a $39,500, or it's actually, so I'm counting that one. So we're going to book the 18.5. There's going to be some amount of budget rollover. And so if we book the 18.5 and roll over 16 from the budget, and I have to include a little bit of a rounding error here, but that actually gets us to 210, which allows us to fund the classroom supply program for the teachers, and all the other things sort of on the line item, on the the line items of the budget. So that's stuff like we help Mosaic Camp with the donation. We make a yearbook donation, so every student can have a yearbook. We run a staff appreciation party, facilities and green schoolyard. All those items would fit into this $210,000 budget. Sarah, I saw that you maybe had your hand up.
No, there was just a couple questions, but they were answered in the chat.
Okay. Any questions here?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Fleur Hunt, Malena's mom, first grader. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the proposal really clearly. And I feel like I remember the budget from last year being a little higher. And so I guess my macro question is, does that mean we anticipate being able to do similar things with a little bit less money this year? Or is there still a gap that we then are going to be looking to cover? And maybe that's the next thing that you're going to get to. But just as like all of this is amazing, incredible work so far. And from everything I can see, like this very strategic, and I would support it. I'm trying to wrap my head around like what the plan is.
Totally.
And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but that's my burning question.
You could not have queued up my next slide any better. This is your question, right? What is if we compare this year to last year, there's a $25,000 difference. So what is the difference? Am I understanding that correctly? Yes, so the differences in these two items. The teaching positions are actually costing us about $23,000 less this year. The reason is because Max applied for a grant of about $20,000 and got it. So
amazing.
That is taking pressure off of the PTA's budget to provide that money. And the other line item, again, is this bank fees. We just don't need to budget as much after tracking it for a year. So those are the two line items that are costing a little bit less money this year. Did that answer your question?
Right?
Yes, and also now I'm even more excited. That's fantastic.
Cool. Yes, Max is our school principal extraordinaire. Any questions related to this? Does this all make sense? All right, so this is my last slide before the proposal. So we talked about a budget of $210,000. And I just kind of want to like be very, very clear that that is relying on a certain amount of rollover from this year's budget. And that rollover is most of this rollover is coming from teacher reimbursements, right? Like we've only used about half the money in our teacher supply reimbursement program. And it kind of remains to be seen how many teachers like submit reimbursement requests between now and the end of the year. If there's no more requests, right, we're going to roll over about $16,000 and we're going to be just fine. If like half of that money gets used up, we're going to roll over $12,000 and we're going to have to figure out how to come up with about $4,000. We're going to be about $4,000 short of the 210. If every single teacher takes every single dollar out of that program, we're going to roll over about $8,000. And so we'd have to figure out how to make up about $8,000 to get to the 210. So I just want to be like uber clear that, you know, when I talk about a scenario or a path to be fully funded, I am making some assumptions here. And these are kind of some scenarios that I'm laying out to just be very, very transparent with folks about those assumptions. Any questions related to this?
Is that money allocated to this year? Is that what you're saying, Tim? That like there's remaining budget in this year's teaching, and so we're banking that people aren't going to pull too much more, and you're just telling folks, okay.
This is kind of the scenarios. Like I call it a high rollover rate would mean like not a lot of teachers from here on out request reimbursements. A mid rollover is like we're using about half the money in that pool, and a low rollover is we're using all the money in that pool.
And if we hit low rollover, we'd be like borrowing against teaching supplies for next year. Like what happens?
Yeah, so if we hit low rollover, so this is all to say, well, we could do a couple things, right? We could cut the budget from the 210, figure out a way to do that. Or between now and our budget meeting in September, if we can raise more money, that basically de-risks these scenarios, these rollover scenarios is another way to think about it. So go ahead.
And just to clarify, if that happens, right? And if it is, you know, we would be putting everything that we make past the point towards the classroom supplies, correct? Like extra money passed over the summer?
Right. So we would have to kind of decide if we're going to come up short, we're going to have to kind of decide where from the budget we would pull that. So that could be classroom supplies. That could be other items in sort of what I term the other bucket, right? Like maybe we're not writing as big a check to Mosaic Camp next year, right? Maybe we're not writing as big a check for the teacher appreciation party. Like there's various things that we could do to sort of make up the difference. But
Okay, I have one question. Is there a deadline? Someone asked, is there a deadline for expense reimbursement, like a date when they can, a cutoff date to submit?
is it for CERC or for
Teacher
Oh,
reimbursements.
yeah. So I will honor teacher reimbursements through the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year ends on June 30th. So that's why it's important. Like, I'm not going to know the true rollover until the first meeting, like until, you know, early July. Like that's the point at which I will know what the true rollover is. Anything here is just sort of, I'm making guesses.
Great. One other question is, when is the last date for donations? I assume the last date of,
We'll
Yeah.
take donations anytime.
but that goes towards this coming fiscal year before it starts going to the next fiscal year. So it'd be the very
Yeah.
last day of this fiscal year, right?
I see Carla shaking her head. We can, yes.
That's best
That would be the
practices,
best.
but whatever you want to
Yeah,
finagle.
best practices would be donations made before the end of this fiscal year will be put towards next fiscal year. If you make a donation next fiscal year, that would actually go towards the following fiscal year. So
That
June,
same person asked if we were going to do a final push, maybe?
we can certainly discuss that. For
We can
sure.
also just check in with the teachers just via an email to get, you know, hey, are you planning to request reimbursement for any more stuff for the next month? Can you give us like a sense? A lot of people will give us a sense.
That's a good idea too. Yeah. And like I said in one of my earlier slides, like I will be fully prepared to give a detailed budget update in our final meeting of the year. And that will give an even clearer picture of where we're at, right? As we roll to the end of the fiscal year and into the next one. Any other questions? All righty. So question number 1 is we're proposing to spend this $172,000, so 170 to fund the teaching positions and a small chunk just as an operating budget as we start the next fiscal year. So that's the question sort of before the PTA today. Like I said, this is my first PTA budget meeting, so I do not know how the process operates. If we do like a yay, nay, or like
Had a whole plan. Where's David? David,
I had a whole plan when it was going to be really contentious and we weren't going to raise enough money and everything was getting cut. I think that we're switching to a lighter weight, traditional, you want to do show of hands or some sort of like Zoom reaction, right? And I think it's okay to vote against this. Vote against this means let's come up with a different plan, right? A vote for this means this sounds reasonable. Rebecca, you're leading this meeting in some sense. How would you like to collect that information?
Awesome. Thank you so much, David, for empowering me to make this on the fly choice. So I don't know that we need to like have names listed or anything of who voted for what. So I think I take it to Sarah. So Sarah, as the secretary, is the one who has to record the number of votes. So
I would say let's just put yes or no in the chat, because then we're saving the text of this, correct?
well, that would make things so easy on.
We are saving
the PTA secretary.
We are saving the text of this. Like we can get the text transcript of this, correct?
You better save it before the meeting ends, just to be sure, Sarah. Then you can hit ... and save.
Got it.
So before we take this vote, let's just address any remaining questions. So one question is, Tim, were there any items that didn't make the cut that we like didn't even include? Or is this pretty much everything that was, you know, on our list from past years and for what we hoped for?
In terms of teaching positions?
Just in terms of
Or-
like, basically it's just, is there anything people aren't seeing here that we like secretly cut the water slide thing that people were excited about and we just kind of trashed it without telling anyone, or like we used to have it?
Got
and we're
it.
not funding it anymore.
Yeah, so when I talk about the 210, which is kind of the goal in September, that includes everything at the same funding level as this year. And like I mentioned, the two real key differences are we're spending less money to fund the teaching positions due to the grants that Max got. And we're slashing the fees that go to PayPal, is what we're cutting. And we're cutting it because we don't need to budget as much, to be clear.
And another question was just about the math specialist. Yes, the math specialist is new. It is a really awesome position that Max has worked with the staff to create, that they really believe is necessary for the school. So even though that's new, that was like, I think one of the #1 teacher and staff requests of what they really felt they needed to support students. Okay, the question about why are we buying in bulk here, it is way too confusing to possibly answer. I'm sorry. Like Max deals with all of these different buckets of money that have different levels of sort of power, like certain things have to go to certain other things. So ultimately, we are sort of writing a check for this with his assurance that it will enable him to fund these things, but we're not tracking like why $37 goes to this like weird state account that then comes back with this amount. You have to trust in Max that he does it every year and he knows what he's doing, but it just makes it so that we're not actually paying the full cost of certain of these things. Like I'm sorry, there's not a better way to explain it, but it is simply a package deal. If we wanted to get rid of, oh, let's sacrifice a K1 art teacher, like we would literally have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a whole new plan because you can't just pull that out.
Rebecca, I'm on the call now, so I'm
Oh, is
happy
it-
to just provide like a little more context. Hi, everyone. So basically they're like Rebecca covered it pretty well. And I think we've talked about this in previous meetings, but there are different budget constraints based on staff, and staffing is another issue too. So I'm basically, I find ways when the PTA pays for a salary of a staff member, it doesn't align with what the district pays. The district pays in terms of average salaries. That's what they allocate. So we have workarounds where we can save money. So really, in reality, all of this stuff here on the left would cost well over 170,000. But with the PTA being able to pay this, we can use some of that money in some small buckets that can only be used on certain staff members or certain positions. And so this is absolutely by far the highest savings option for us, with the PTA paying parts of these positions. And so that's why it's kind of like a one bucket of all of these staff members or positions that we'd like to continue it to kind of keep that sustainability factor at the school. If that makes sense. It's kind of like I'm happy to also, a couple parents have asked me to like show specifics. I'm happy to show that at the school, or if you want me to give you some examples. But if you're, I like the budget part of this and the math part, so I'm happy to geek out and show you that.
Max, there's a bunch of questions. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead, Tim.
Go, no, please go ahead.
There's a bunch of questions about the math intervention because it's new. Do you want to just tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, sure. So we have some funding for about part-time of a math intervention teacher and a math coach. So this is like where staffing comes in, right? Because no one's going to take a job that's 0.4, 0.5 at the school. That means we'd have to share them with another school. So this would be a way that the PTA can help. So I have another 0.1 that we can fund from another grant. This is an example. So the PTA would really cover, potentially if I can get this grant, 0.4, and I think that I will. So I'm just factoring that into this 170,000. So the PTA is saying, okay, I'm saying I have an idea for someone who's going to be really strong at pulling groups of students to do math intervention, as well as coaching all of our teachers. What are some tangible strategies and ways to have differentiated math support for all of our students. So this person is going to do a lot of work with teachers and with students. So we have a really great candidate in mind, but we don't have full-time funding. This is where the PTA would come in handy and would actually be a lot less for the PTA to pay part of their salary than for us to pay it on the school end. Because if we paid on the school end, we'd have to pay the actual 0.5 salary. And for this specific candidate, their actual salary is going to be lower. So the PTA is saving us, like in this case, $20,000, about approximately somewhere between 15 and 20 just for this one position. And this was looping it back to our summit. The math intervention teacher and math focus for our school was also resonated a lot with our teachers and also resonated with our families. So when we look at our staff input, a high priority from our staff and teachers said, we need to focus on math next year. Just like reading intervention, we need to have math intervention and someone who's working with teachers and students. So I'm pulling it from both parent, say from PTA meetings in the summit, as well as from our staff surveys and input over the past few months, as well as from data we're seeing from the school. So that's, I guess, the best way to answer that. So if we, like, another question came up, like if we somehow raise another 10,000 here, and I think that's where the amendment work comes in. So in the fall, there will be a way for the PTA to say, actually, we ended up raising more than 172,000 and we've hit these other buckets. Like this doesn't include the teachers getting money to spend in their classroom, which is really important to them and goes a long way. So if we raise even more than that, then we would be able to come back in the fall and say, okay, we have a little bit of money. How could we spend it? What's a good way to use it outside of this?
That's right. Yeah. So that's the point of the amendment vote. So that sort of we're trying to lock in the $170,000 today because Max needs that information today, and any money that we have more money. And any money that we raise beyond that would come up in an amendment vote the first PTA meeting of the new year, of the new fiscal year.
I think that between questions that have been asked both live and in the chat, I think we've covered everything. And just in the interest of time, unless anyone else needs to stop us for an urgent one, I think we should at this point see if there's any PTA members who are willing to propose that we move to vote, and anyone willing to second that.
Hey, Rebecca, it's Carla. I propose to motion for a vote, and I'll just state my yes vote as a part of that as well.
Thank you, President Emeritus. Strong vote of support from former president.
I second.
Right. Okay, so I think then at this moment we ask, do you approve of the fiscal year 2024 budget proposal for today? Those in favor, please type yes into the chat. Those opposed, please type no. And even though our leadership is recommending this proposal, we really do approach everything with an open mind, and people have fears of seeming contrarian, but we welcome everyone to give their honest thoughts, and we are grateful for your votes. We'll do another 10 to 20 seconds here of giving people the opportunity to type in their vote. And just a reminder, which I didn't mention, only PTA members are able to vote. Pretty much everyone here has long been one, but if you are not sure for any reason of your status, or you're new to the school, you're not sure you're formally a PTA member, you can message me directly and we'll figure it out. But these look like valid votes. All right.
It looks unanimous to me. I can do the count later.
Fantastic.
31.
That's great news, and a huge show of support for our principal's vision for our school, for the work the PTA has done to think it through. thanks everyone. It's really nice to have an enthusiastic, unanimous path forward to our new school year together. Great work. And thank you, Tim, for just slogging through all these details to make it clear so that everyone feels good about this path forward. This is awesome.
Sure thing. Do we want to hit our poll question that we talked about, or skip it?
Throw it in. Throw it in.
Okay. So this is we're not going to do this today. We will do a follow-up poll. But one thing that has come up is that if you look kind of at this purple box over here, I sort of break down our sources of income for the PTA for the money that we're spending today. An overwhelming majority of that is coming from individual donations and the fundraisers that we put on for individual donors. I was not part of the school when this happened, but in the past, we have put on a large scale fundraiser. And by that, I mean the Taste of Potrero. It was raising in the neighborhood of $150,000. The downside of it is it took many, many, many hours to put on, and to put on sort of what I hear is a world-class event to raise all this money. So we kind of operate as a PTA this year under the hypothesis that we were going to rely on individual donors to make up the budget. However, we kind of wanted to get a feeling for next year, looking forward to fiscal year 2025. Do folks have an appetite to put on a large scale fundraising event, or are we okay relying on individual donors? I won't berate that, like, that's the background. We'll send out a poll. If you don't fill out the poll, we're not going to do a large scale fundraising event. We're just going to we're going to take that as signal in and of itself. So that's my second to last slide. And then just as a wrap up, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for your time and dollars and attention in this whole process. We did it. And my very last note is I have written down all the donations. We have a running list of them. We will get sort of the tax receipt acknowledgement letters out to everyone, I promise. We were just kind of, we were sort of overwhelmed because everyone was so generous. We had so many people. So thank you, everyone. I promise you we will get you tax letters. Just give us a minute. And that is all I have for this segment.
Thank you so much, Tim. And, you know, the subtext of what Tim is saying is just that it used to take a pretty small crew of people, many, many months of work to run something like Taste of Potrero, which few people loved more than I did. It was an awesome event, but it just took a level of work that I can definitely say, you know, I've been running events now for our school for the past couple years, and even sometimes just getting enough volunteers to run our own community events is a lot. I don't think that there's an appetite there. I don't see a lot of people looking to do, you know, 10, 20, 30 hours of extra work per month. It really is a slog. And, you know, again, the subtext of this is sort of like, let's hope people feel good about patting themselves on the back for writing these checks and saving a small group of people the work of having to put on a whole event just so that like friends and family can buy a ticket to feel like they're getting something, and rather just cut out the middleman and say, how about what you're getting is a great school with amazing resources without it being on the backs of a small group of people running what is definitely a fun event. But anyone who has thoughts on that can absolutely reach out. And, you know, there are lots of different ways to imagine this. And I will just say, as the person who has run all the large scale events, it would be quite the enormous undertaking. And anyone who is proposing that we should go back to doing those definitely should be planning to help run them, because there is just such a commitment to taking that on. So that aside, as our little passive aggressive subtext on that, like, it really should feel good that we did this just within our own community. And everyone leveraging their own resources and family members and being creative together. So the fact that we just voted on a budget that covers our main concerns for the fall is unbelievable. We are going to add to that budget almost for sure and be able to meet all the needs. That's exceptionally rare. And we really appreciate everyone who lent a hand, not just by donating money. There were people who helped in so many other ways, and it's pretty great. And now it's 7:58 and we want to be aware of the valuable time that you have in the evenings to relax. So we're going to rush through our remaining items, and fortunately no decisions to be made. It's mostly just announcements and info. So I'm going to quickly go back to sharing my screen. And okay, we are into committee updates. I'm just going to speak on behalf of the yearbook committee. There's still time to order a yearbook if you didn't already. Feel free to check out the details later of these slides, which will be posted on our website. You'll get an email. Merch, always on sale. It is on sale this Friday at our Pride March. It is your last big opportunity of the year to get awesome merch. Please come with your cash and be ready to order something awesome. Teacher Appreciation Week. I don't think, oh yeah, Deborah's not here tonight to talk about this, so I'm just going to summarize all these ideas. We have about $1,000 left in our teacher appreciation budget. We want to use that money to organize a couple of awesome, mostly meals for the staff. So if anyone has connections to cheap tacos or great sandwiches, I will be hitting up the Stone family who own Atlas Cafe, but anyone else you know who has great food in the area, we can get a decent deal would be great. And we will also totally separately from that be having room parents email their grade levels to collect any monetary gift you'd like to give to your teacher and the staff, as it's sort of a combo teacher appreciation and end of year gift. So you're not going to give something else as well, but this is the sort of big, like, thanks for a great year, you know, contribute to that only if you are inclined to do so, no pressure at all, but it is exactly the same as what we did for the holiday collection, that the grade level gathers it all, divvies it up amongst the teachers, and also gives a cut of it to the wider staff, so that our custodians, our amazing office staff, end the year with a little something extra in their pocket, which they richly deserve. There will be more info on that coming your way. That is what I just said. Events, God, I'm going fast. Cirque de D-Dub, huge success. Lots of wine consumed, lots of fun had. Thanks everyone for showing up. It was amazing. The upcoming events, which have been mentioned a couple times now, the Morning Circle and Pride March this Friday, be there. Teacher Appreciation Week will be coming up May 8th. And then our beloved Ron Russo, second grade teacher, every year does the most incredible talent show. He takes it so seriously. These kids audition and practice and put on a raucous show. So mark your calendar for May 18th.
Rebecca, can I make a quick pitch for this Friday?
Yeah.
It's probably our last morning circle. There's just a lot going on at the end of May. So 90% sure this is our last circle. We have our Pride Committee, our students in Rainbow Club performing. We have Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence here. It would mean a lot for families to come out as well and join the march and the celebrations. There's been a lot of planning that has gone into this, with the rainbow flag and trans flag going up at school. So just family support is really important here. The kids are learning about, or just going over a lot of this work in class. So highly recommend taking just the morning, 8:15 to 9 in the morning, and joining if you can.
And wear some color. Let's make it fun.
Yeah. Ask your kids what color they're supposed to wear, because each grade level has a different color. So they should hopefully know.
Okay, well, good luck with your kindergartner, remembering
Yeah.
everyone. What did the kindergartners just tell us?
With colors, you'd be surprised.
We
Yeah.
have a question. Someone asked if they're an incoming family, are they welcome to the morning circle?
Oh yes, please come. We'd love to.
Yes. I'm actually, that good reminder. I'll send something out to that group tomorrow morning.
Nice idea. Great. Jessica, are you on? Do you want to mention quickly what's happening with the DW Painting Day?
Hi.
Wow.
So this is from Max. So this is, sorry, we've got a full house here. This is sort of a kickoff for the phase 1 of the outdoor learning space that Max has been working on converting the former parking lot. So phase 1 will be to kind of spruce it up, clean it off, paint a beautiful mural and get ready for the furniture that was awarded to the school via a grant from SFUSD. So this will be taking place on Thursday, the 18th and Friday, the 19th. During sort of school hours, the afternoon, ASIP will not be on the blacktop to make time for this. And so if anyone has an interest in this painting, has some of these tools, definitely reach out to Max or myself. And then phase 2 of this project will take place in the future, but will potentially include some stormwater projects and landscaping, what's currently hardscaped and whatnot.
And also with this, just big shout out to Jessica and Megumi. She's also, I don't know if she's in here, but she's one of the landscape architects. Her team has been really pivotal in creating this. Basically, SFUSD was like, you guys are the only school that like came up with all these actual plans. So we'll give you the furniture and plants that you need. It was really helpful. And I think this space is going to look great. So again, timing wise on the 18th and 19th, I would guess like probably like 12 to 3 each day, sometime during school hours. I'll be there. So if you want to support there, email me and then I'll add you to the listserv and I'll send the times out when we get a little closer in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Okay. Moving fast. We've discussed this. Be there Friday. Don't miss it. We've discussed the talent show that's happening. This beautiful slide that Mr. Russo made. Check it out later on our website. It'll be posted. Info about ways to audition. That is already pretty much done, but you know, info to give you background on that. And just some really quick announcements, but this first one is super important. So we do have a PTA leadership position opening up for the new school year. Sarah is terming out as secretary. We will still aggressively rope her in as a volunteer, but we do need an official secretary who is someone who is just really interested in being a part of thinking through decisions for the school and planning things. And officially it's about taking notes during meetings, but we all kind of share the load in different ways. So consider that. And I will say, I have been involved in the PTA since my first year here, but next year will be my last year here. So even if being PTA president in the following year, being involved in a big way seems far away, it's going to come fast. And I'm just putting out the call right now. I manage events, kind of our core thing that we are actively doing at the school. And I am looking for that person who would love to work really closely with me this coming year and see how it works behind the scenes and get their hands dirty and have some fun with it. I love doing it and I'm happy to spread that love. So if you are interested, please start thinking about it and I will corral you at some point in the fall to learn a little bit about that and make the tradition keep going, because there's a lot to hand off and it's a really meaningful and rich, rewarding experience. So keep it in mind. And also I won't disappear, so I'll always be available to consult, but like, let's get that transition plan going. Read through these later. This is just a local new kind of startup food service that is giving us a nice kickback on food purchases, and they raise a decent amount of money through doing their food delivery, especially from local places. So it's nice to support some local businesses this way as well. We have a really cool new museum in our neighborhood, the ICA, that does children's events. So every Saturday from 11 to 3, check that out. And Together Again. Together Again is a show being put on by our feeder middle school, James Lick. So if you'd like to kind of dip your toe in middle school world and see that the public middle schools in this city are amazing, and most of what you fear and have heard is not true at all. As a middle school parent, I can attest to this. James Lick rocks. They're putting on an incredible show, and you should see if you want to join this weekend. Check it out. One really fun thing, we have a promo code from the Giants for very cheap tickets to a May 16th game against the Phillies. If you want to join for that, that's going to be a blast. And I am specifically telling people to buy tickets in the same section because it lets you buy anywhere and we don't want to be spread out. We want to have our core crew together. Happens to be the same night as James Lick's Giants night, so we can all be together and have a good time. Good opportunity to cheer on our team. That's it, folks. Our contact info, as always. Follow-ups, just share that to Sarah, who can include it in our notes. And oh my gosh, homework. I literally didn't have homework for us. I don't know, pat yourself on the back. But extra credit is join the PTA leadership team next year. Think about it.
And by the way, my mother-in-law, like translating the minutes is like the highlight of her whole month. So if you join, she will still translate those for you. So
yes, we have lots of people to lean on, and we really work collaboratively, and we will also hit you up aggressively in the fall to take on just we call them PTA support roles, like being the person who manages membership, being the person who manages merch. Those are great roles. So just please come in the fall ready to take something on. We support each other. No one's left to reinvent the wheel. And I didn't think Max would be on until this point. So this is just a cute picture of the owl and Max. And you still can answer any questions, but let me just hint to everyone, this is our beloved principal who could totally use a great night of sleep. So let's not ask him like a million things, but if something is important, go ahead, have at it. Well, they must love you, Max. They're gonna let you go. Great. I mean, I'm gonna just call it. I'm gonna say, thank you so much, everyone. Amazing meeting. We accomplished a lot. Excellent teamwork, a testament to our rockin' community. Feel free to hang on for an extra minute or two if you want to ask anything. I won't end it yet, but everyone else go be with those kids and get some sleep and throw them in bed and watch a good show after that.